Just to see if we come live. I think we have, and yes, we have. All right, I'm just going to mute myself here so I don't hear two of me. All right. Okay, I think we are good to go. All right, facilitation really is not just for meetings, right? That's our topic for today. And this is really the first of the 5 myths that we want to bring to you in the month of September across every Tuesday. So next week, we'll be there with the second one. So if you want to stay updated and be notified of the next upcoming YouTube live, just make sure you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button to the channel and you will stay updated. All right. So let's dive right in. So it is a known thing that facilitation is really not just for meetings. I don't know, a lot of people are finding it really hard to accept it. So I thought, let's bring that myth out. I've been hearing it across my 20-plus-year journey. In fact, the simplest truth is that facilitation is everywhere. It goes much more beyond meetings. The way I've been looking at it, also with my clients in the recent 2 to 3 years, is that anybody can facilitate. And it starts really from home. It starts not even at the workplace. We facilitate in our day-to-day life. And let's take a look at a couple of examples, right? If you are helping a group drive to a certain decision, if you are bringing them clarity, if you are guiding and moving a conversation forward, even if you are sitting at a restaurant, doesn't have to be like a formal meeting room. If you are helping your family come up with a vacation plan for themselves. So I know we wrote a number of things in like, you already facilitate a three set of things, how do you already facilitate at work, at home, at socials. Let me give you more examples. So at home, you're also maybe getting your family to agree on a vacation destination. We talked about that. Helping elderly parents understand their needs and decide on their healthcare options, or getting your children to even brainstorm and agree on house rules, which is quite similar to what we do in co-creating team agreements at work. Or at socials, coming up and helping friends to plan a reunion or some sort. So you're really facilitating in your day-to-day life anyway. But let's also bring it in today's context of the hybrid world, where recently I was actually coaching a senior project manager, to even facilitate over async options such as Slack and email. So let me give you an example there. Excuse me. So let's take a look at an example there. So this project manager was wondering how she could move from a more telling stance to a more facilitative stance. So of course, we went through a certain amount of coaching. And once she thought, she was ready to experiment this, it was amazing because her team actually pinged her, global team. Her team pinged her on Slack and said, hey, for this particular context, and we don't need to get into the context, but they said, oh, we have these 10 options. Now, which of these 10 options should we do, project manager? And she was like, She was obviously wanting to say, oh, option number 4 is what we should go with. But she was like, okay, I want to try this out, right? I've learned this and I want to move to a facilitative stance intentionally. So how do I do this? So she asked them one question. And of course, I was very happy that she did, because it was also going to reflect on how I helped her out or how I enabled her. And her question to the team on Slack was, okay, which of these 10 options is actually going to move us in the direction of the goal that we want to achieve? And they had a certain goal. And she named that goal to them. And then that got them thinking. They were like, oh, good question. And then they said, oh, okay, you know what? Let's all just use these emojis to identify which of these 10 options. And they just put those 10 options on Slack and then using emojis like a poll. And then they, kind of polled for which of those 10 options actually met that goal. And then they figured there was just three options. And then they were like, oh, but there are still three. So how do we decide from these three? Because they were all working towards a very tight timeline. They had to deliver. So they were like, we obviously don't want to have the number of people to deliver all three and work with all three. And then we just need one option to work with because we have to just move this context forward. We don't want to work with all three. So she's like, okay, but now that we have at least these three options, why don't we ask ourselves two questions? One, now that we know all these three are going to get us to our goal, one, which of these has got minimum risk and minimum dependencies? And then the other question was like, okay, which of these is going to make it happen faster, not just for the product, but also for us to reach that goal in the time that we had? Now, of course, you could ask different questions. I'm just giving you an example of how she moved using a facilitative stance forward. And guess what? They all said, okay, option number 6 is it. Now, of course, when she started this conversation, if she had gone to a telling stance, it would have been option number 4. And she moved to a very facilitative stance, and it was option number 6. And she thought that was a very good option. She would have probably never thought of that. And she gave me that feedback later. She thought this whole, bringing this collective intelligence into the Slack room, if you want to call it that, that was a great idea. And that got her to move from not telling them something, but letting them come up with a solution that they owned, that they co-owned. So all in all, facilitation doesn't have to be just in meetings. It's pretty much everywhere. It goes beyond meetings. And it happens in everyday life. Even if you look at, for example, project planning, when I just take that example, when I used to plan projects, I could even just sit down with my team, or of course, I even plan projects today, but I'm talking of formal projects, right? As a formal project manager with a designation, I used to sit down with my team. We used to even co-create a rough sketch of a project plan. And then we used to be like, okay, let's just brainstorm ideas. How is it going to happen? Okay, Gantt charts was a thing then. So yes, we used to create those charts together and not say, who does what. I've been through that part of my life too. But then we did that together in that same, sitting at that table. And that could be just a table in the pantry. It doesn't have to be like a formal meeting room with fancy stickers and Post-its and whatnot and sketch pens, etc. But we then prioritize using whatever we had and just mark those priorities. How do we want to move forward? And then summarized everything and, especially the decisions that we've taken, what actions do we want to take, and what is the plan that we own together and not just me as a project manager. So yes, you can do this asynchronously. Yes, you can facilitate in day-to-day life with all these things that I just spoke about or shared about. And if you'd like a copy of this, just ping me, or just write in the comments and I'll be happy to share that. In fact, we came up with that for our 5 days facilitation Kickstart journal, which we did in the month of August, early August, end of July. And so basically you can facilitate much, much beyond meetings, and facilitation is everywhere, provided you take the right stance, ask all the questions which are really powerful, not yes and no questions. So ask powerful, open-ended questions. And it's called facilitation. You don't need a formal meeting room to be able to do that, right? It's just everywhere. So that's pretty much all I wanted to share about this very first myth. But I do want to leave you with a reflection question, and that's from our journal itself. And that question is, what moments from your day to day, or even from your whole week, last week, are you now thinking are moments where you could have facilitated instead of telling, instead of directing, commanding, whatever other stance, but moments that you could have facilitated, or moments that you realize after listening to this today during the session, or maybe later when you watch this video, maybe those are the moments that you realize, oh, I'm already facilitating. I don't really need to, get up and say, hey, I don't know how to facilitate. You can, and you already facilitate. Well, that's it for this myth. Facilitations definitely goes just beyond meetings. And I'll see you next Tuesday with my colleague Rucha Kapre, where we are busting the second myth of facilitation. And let me quickly say what that myth is. Yeah, facilitators must be experts on the content. That's definitely a common myth. So I'll see you then. You take care. Bye for now.